I'm Tyler Heppell. I'm a fifth generation potato farmer, and I also create 2 to 6 videos per week under the personnel Potato Tie. This is where I show the good, the bad, the beautiful parts of agriculture, and I absolutely love my job. And I'm super excited to be here today.
Thanks, Tyler. I always like to backtrack on the first time that I meet my guests. Do you remember when that was?
I still remember the Zoom calls that we were doing with LOI and thinking that Harrison had really good style, and it seeing your guys' Instagram page being this is the perfect couple.
Aww. Well, okay, so maybe for our listeners, so I met you through LOI, which is called League of Innovators, but a group for entrepreneurs. And it was a 12-week programming that was meant for, really anywhere if you were just starting your business or kind of in the growth stage as well. When you did that, were you doing it for 10 servings or the farm? Or
I was doing it for 10 servings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that was the first time we met. And then you invited us over to the farm.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was really cool too. And that was about a year ago.
That's crazy. It's been a year. Since then, I've come to your wedding, and we've had so many good hangouts.
Yeah, and cold plunges too.
And cold plunge.
Okay, I'm going to start off with a little rapid fire before we hop into all the good stuff.
For sure.
So first question for you is, what keeps you up at night, ambition or anxiety?
Ambition, for sure. I've always been a more the glass is half full, not half empty.
Yeah, make sure you get that one right as you're saying it.
Words are hard today. I just see so many opportunities and was really excited to try to conquer them all.
Love it. Are you running your business or is it running you?
So recently we just switched a few things in our business. One is on Wednesdays, I'm not going on the farm at all. I'm actually staying from home and just working on processes. And then I also just recently hired a PA, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to get more in the aspect of sharpening the axe instead of constantly swinging it.
Totally. I also find one of the things that are mottos that I kind of have thought about more is having my phone on. And I know just before we started recording, they're my phone's always on D&D. So the kind of terminology I think of is are you allowing people to always walk into your office? Is it open door policy all the time? So now you're trying to get on top of that before.
And that was really the biggest thing that hit home for me is when Dan Martell said, if you are the one that's answering all your emails, you're just allowing anyone to walk into your office and say whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I actually did an audit of my time and found that I was spending 2.5 hours a day doing emails. And I was like, this is ridiculous.
And then you found the VA, which we will talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Third question for you. What's harder for you, starting or letting go?
Letting go. I find starting pretty easy, but I really like to finish cycles, and it frustrates me when I can't.
Okay. What's fueling you right now, passion or persistence?
There's different areas of my life. I would really say that social media is a passion, and I would say that the farm is a persistence.
Okay, and I'm excited to also talk about a little bit more your social media side and then the farming side, because I could be wrong in saying this, but I feel a lot of people that I know that are Potato Tie, they just see it as a social media thing. But the more I've gotten to know you, I feel there's actually a lot more that goes on behind in the business aspect too.
Totally.
So I'm excited to dive into that too. Are you breaking barriers or just breaking even?
I'm breaking barriers.
Awesome.
For sure.
Okay, great. And last one here, are you living to work or working to live?
I do a really good job of work-life balance and vacationing. So I work to live.
Nice. Actually, you do travel a lot. You just got back from Nash.
From Texas.
Oh, Texas. You're going back to Texas.
To Texas.
And then you're going to Mexico next?
Mexico, and then we got the Stampede, and you got New York. So.
Oh, you're going to New York too? So what are you doing there?
I'm just going to catch a New York Yankees game.
Okay.
It's kind of me and Joel Hansen are going to reward from finishing 75 hard.
Awesome. Good for you. I was literally just texting Jenna yesterday because they're in the Cayman Islands. And I'm going there next week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You work to live too. I love it.
Yeah. I'm I don't want to this thing run me. Okay. So I wanted to maybe start off a little bit here and go through it's January 2025. Just touching on 75 hard as well. Going into the new year. Now, one of the things I loved when I met you, and I think it was December 2023, I guess, when you invited us to the farm for the first time that we actually met in real life. And I feel we just hit it off and we just started talking about life, goals, and all that stuff. And one of the things that really resonated going into 2024 at the time was we're talking about New Year. And I've never really done resolutions. But one of the things that you brought up was a motto. So maybe do you want to share a little bit about like that process, like where it comes from maybe, and what your motto is this year?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been a New Year's resolution person. I've loved doing them. I've loved challenging myself. But at one point I thought, you know what, let's have a theme for the year. So a few years ago I started, and my theme for the year was replacing aimless entertainment with learning and education.
Ooh, was that 2023?
That was 2020. That was 2023. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that year, you know, I got like my first YouTube plaque and started like my videos started to get a lot better. I started to get a lot more traction on social media. And that was because at night, you know, I wasn't playing video games or watching TV. I was editing and I was learning how to edit, watching different techniques to try to add to my videos or to try to add to my storytelling skills. And I've really built the base there. And then the next year, 2024, and I believe that this is your motto as well.
It was from you. I stole it from you. It was so good to not.
I love it. It's not stealing. It's inspiring. But it was swing big. And whenever I found myself at a crossroad, I would choose the option of which one is swinging bigger. And I still remember like one of the first days of January, it's like, it's raining next week. We have all these extra potatoes. Should I just do a random ugly potato day? And it's like, well, which one would be swinging big?
Yeah.
But, okay, well, let's do ugly potato day in the rain, right? And even planning our last ugly potato that day that you're out, where 15,000 people came out. It was like, that was the definition of swinging big. And all those small decisions that I made throughout the year and led me to making that one epic day happen, right? And so this year, it's funny, it's kind of a little bit the opposite of swing big, but it's go slow. So I have a tendency just to rush through life because I have, you know, a very ambitious person. I have so many things on my to-do list that I don't get to smell the roses. And I don't get to enjoy sometimes small conversations because I'm just rushing to go home so I can work on something else. So I'm trying to slow my life down a little bit more, maybe do a little bit less like extra stuff and just focus on the main things.
Well, thanks for making it here.
No.
Yeah.
You're a main thing.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's like learning when to say no, and like sometimes saying no also creates more yeses in your life. It just opens up more time to do sometimes what you want more rather than just agreeing in that case. I was just going to say like your motto, swing big, like in the same sense of it bringing, how many people came to Ugly Potato Day in October?
15,000.
Yeah, 15,000. So like definition of just like those small decisions that you make to like compound to the big one. Same thing here, like as we were like, we had just gotten back from Mexico. It was like a relaxing trip. Harrison was like driving down here. We were just signed up for a home show convention center and he saw a number on the door. And as I'm looking there, it's like, I remember he sent a video and it was the thing of like, this place is for lease. And I don't know if you know this story, but he just saw the number. He texted it like super like one-to-one with Deb, who's our landlord. And was basically just like, will you take a chance on us? And the thought process was, because the motto was swing big, was it's like now or never. Just like, is this a swing big decision? Should we do this? And that's how we literally ended up with here. Otherwise, we would have just kind of, I don't know, stayed smaller, just done it from our home or like just done e-com. So
that's so cool.
Yep.
It takes you out of your comfort zone.
It did.
By having that mindset.
Yeah. And I think also like, so this year for me, it's momentum and it's like all the momentum from last year. Like, are we growing on that? But I think also one of the ones with yours that I would add to is also just like the word of patience. Like, can you wait through stuff sometimes, or like knowing that the decisions that you're making now in like 2025 or when you're like in your 30s, like what does that look like in your 40s too? So
it's so good. I can't imagine not having motto for my year. Like I have like 8 different mottos written down now. I'm like, I can't wait for next year. I can't wait for the year after's motto. Like, because there's so much power to saying this is the theme of the year, and then brainstorming, like, what does it look like? Like, you know, if your year was like gratitude, it's like, what would it look like to have more gratitude in your life? Or if it was generosity, what would our lives look like if there was more generosity in it, right? You kind of foresee your year ahead and it just guides your path. It's powerful.
Yeah. No, I like that one. I've never thought of it too. I think I always think of something in like a business perspective or in a work thing, but something so simple as like gratitude or generosity, like how can you actually apply that to your day to day?
And it affects your business too. Like I've been starting my morning this year, like reading and like doing gratitude. And I've had more joy this year in January than I've had like any other month, which is just insane. Like the power that gratitude is, and just like starting your day off right, reading without your screen has just been amazing for me.
Okay. So do you do like a guided journal, or are you just like thinking of gratitude, or like are you writing down 5 things? Because I know like each person has a different way of expressing it or showing it. And I know like on TikTok, it's like, oh, like gratitude journal. This is how I start my day. So like, what does that look like for you?
So first thing I do is I turn on like a UV light. So I get like the sunlight right away. And it's awesome for waking up. It's awesome for feeling joy and happiness to the first start of the day. But I read my Bible and then I do my gratitude through prayer. So, and a lot of people are praying and they're like, God, give me this, God, fix that, God, that. My whole morning prayers are just things I'm thankful for. And then if I want to pray for other things, I do that later on in the day. And that's just been like amazing in my life.
Okay, so what does Potato Tie's morning routine look like beyond that then? So you wake up, UV light, you do your morning gratitude, and then like what does even the typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so eat breakfast and then I go to the farm for 7 a.m., do a lap around of all the departments, talk to all the department heads, and then usually answer emails for about an hour. And then I have at least 3 meetings a day, whether that's, we're trying to innovate the farm a lot. So I've been kind of given the green light to innovate and spent $3.5 million in 9 months on new machinery.
Wow.
So making sure it all coordinates and all the machineries connect well together and the plan's all good. So that's been a large part of my job lately. And then hiring too. Like I've hired, in the last 6 months, I've hired 8 people. So it's always looking for top of the line candidates. No, I don't think you can overpay for a good employee.
Yeah.
And I think it makes a really big difference. So that's something our farm's trying to do. And then also just partner with universities and trying to get like a co-op program going. So yeah, just lots of different things. And then so seasonality. If it's summer, I always go to the field every day and look at the potatoes or look at the squash.
For quality, what are we looking for?
Yeah, quality to see the growth, to see when we're going to have to harvest. You do tests on the potatoes too, and different trials as well to try to find new varieties or different ways to grow them. And then if it's fall, I'm more in the barn, making sure that labor is working efficiently. We have around 50 employees on the farm, and labor is our largest cost on the farm. So trying to make
more than the machinery.
Well, I mean, the purchasing the machinery every year is expensive, but the idea with the machinery is that I want to
get more efficient.
More efficient. Because right now we're at like 26% cost on labor to revenue, and I'd like to get below 20 in the next few years.
Okay, so there's a lot of metrics to farming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the business of farming itself.
Well, it's so easy to be successful in farming because like other farmers, they don't know where they're making money. They don't know their costs, and if there's one thing I've learned from reading like the autobiographies and biographies of successful people, it's they know their costs down to a penny, and they know how low they can go to drive out competition or to make decisions. And that's one of the biggest aspects of farming is knowing your costs and everything, and you can make really good decisions.
So knowing your numbers in every case.
Yes, absolutely.
Small thing, super easy to remember, but what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed.
Oh.
So if you're not looking at it, or if you're shy, or like not shy, but like if you're scared to look at it, or you don't like looking at the numbers, it's like, well, then you're just putting a blind spot to yourself really in your growth as well. Okay, there's so many things that I wanted to unpack in that. So like I first started with saying like, what does your day look like?
Yeah.
So you're a morning person, number one. You're up at 7.
I'm a morning person. I hate mornings. I would love to stay up like 12 o'clock at night, but I'm trying to go to bed every night at 10.
Okay. That's so opposite from like our schedule. Like I think we've stayed up to like, when I say we, Harrison and I, like 2 or 3 o'clock for the past like 4 nights in a row. Doing nothing, like nothing, I don't want to say nothing important, but like just like editing the podcast, like having fun with that, or like he's been working on landing pages. Okay, so morning person there. And then when you're saying, okay, then what's the second thing? So you go to the farm and you check in on everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, what does your team look like? So if you have about 50 people or like 50 laborers, like break down a farm to me as if like I was 10 years old, because I did not understand the business of farming before I met you.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting.
So we have 4 departments on the farm. We have the office staff. We have the shop. So we have 4 full-time mechanics that fix tractors and everything.
Okay.
We have the barn. So they pack all the orders, they wash the potatoes, and then we have the fields. They, do maintenance on the tractors and in the off season, and they're driving the tractors and planting the potatoes in season.
Okay.
So
you're really talking it down. You're slowing it. Got it.
And so just making sure that everyone's happy and well managed. I like to check in every morning with all of them.
Cool. Okay, so then you do that. And then when you're saying emails, like what kind of emails is a farmer getting? Like what are you talking about and with who? Is it like distribution? Yeah, like what are the questions that you get?
Yeah, a lot of it's sales.
Okay.
Yeah, related. I mean, I get a lot of wild emails because my email address is just open. Anyone can email it. So I probably get like 10 to 15 people emailing me for a job a week. And I've always made it a point that I will always respond to those emails. And then just a lot of collab opportunities, a lot of like random brand stuff getting emailed to me. And I just like to make sure I clear my emails. So like at least 10 by the end of every week.
Okay. 10. I was going to say inbox 0 is like one of those things that I'm like, this is not a good goal to have for me personally. I'm like, why is inbox 0 like the metric of having a good or productive day?
Yeah.
So, okay, 10 per week. Okay. And then I guess like in that as well, like you're maybe juggling like Tyler as like Potato Tie, like content creator, and then also managing a farm as well.
Yeah.
Maybe just to go through that, because I think that's a super interesting point. Like even when you introduced yourself, like fifth generation farmer. So what does that mean? Like, so from your dad to your grandpa to your great grandfather, and then before that as well. And then like, how did that even start?
Totally. So it was my grandpa's grandpa started it.
Yeah.
And he got, it was like a grant or a break on some interests to buy the farm after World War One. After World War One.
Yeah.
And so we bought the 40 acres that our wash facility is on right now in Colville, Surrey. And then he grew like maybe 5-10 acres of potatoes. And then his son, so my grandpa's dad, grew like maybe 20 acres of potatoes.
Of the 40 acres.
40. And they would rent lands around them too.
Okay.
And then my grandpa was the first one to grow like 300 acres of potatoes. So a fairly big jump. And then my dad now, like, he grew like 700 acres of potatoes, and we started doing squash. And then now I'm starting to step into ownership and take over the farm.
Okay. So bear with me here. So you had 40 acres that was bought by family.
Yeah.
And then you talk about then growing to like 300. How does that happen? Is it like you're buying the land, or you mentioned renting it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you grow? Because I guess that's your growth strategy too, right? You can produce more, so then you can sell more as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. I mean, then there's a certain sweet spot where you don't want to overproduce because the sales aren't there.
Okay.
But a lot of our land is rented.
Okay.
Because land is so expensive. It's $100,000 a year for farmland. Where like if you go to Ontario, it would be like $15,000 a year. Or you go to Saskatchewan, it would be like $5,000 a year. Right? So land here is very expensive. So a lot of it's rented.
Rented in province or out of province?
In province.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is our land so expensive for farming just because that's just what our market is, or is it because we have like better weather conditions that also help with farming?
Because only like 4% of our land here is farmable. Because you think we have the mountains, so that encroaches on farmland, and we have the sea, and then we have everyone in Canada wanting to move here. So there's so much urban sprawl that's happening where a lot of the land has been taken out of the land reserve that be built on, or you'll see like people building massive mansions on farmland and just kind of having like a blueberry farm that isn't super productive, right? So it's really unfortunate how much good farmland has buildings on it now.
Okay, that's interesting. So then, Dad had 300, and then you go to 700. Mm-hmm. So you're growing potatoes because obviously you're Potato Tie.
Yeah.
What other like vegetables or produce can you also make? Because when I came to Ugly Potato Day, I had no idea that there were other things in the mix too.
So we grow squash.
Okay.
Also just potatoes and squash. Okay. But with Ugly Potato Day, we partnered with other farms that donate like the carrot and the beet and
that makes sense. Okay, got it. Okay. And then when you're saying also like it being like passed down generation to generation, like we've touched on this on a little bit, but how does that work in a family dynamic as well in terms of like buying a business from your family, or like what's that dynamic there?
It's one of the hardest things that you can ever go through as a family farm is family transition. And the amount of siblings that will never talk to each other again because of it is actually staggering. So it's a very delicate situation going through family transition, but one of the big things that I want to be able to do is purchase a farm off my family. That way it keeps it fair between my siblings, and that way it's something that I'm earning for. You know, how many times has someone been handed something and they floundered it away? You know, there's a saying that the first generation builds it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation destroys it. And I almost kind of look at myself as a third generation. Yes, I'm fifth, but like the first two generations, they kept it the same.
Yeah.
Like they were just farming back in the 20s just to stay alive and just to keep their family alive, right? Where this is now a bigger operation. And so I'm a third generation farmer, and I don't want to be the one that destroys it.
Totally. Well, I think it like goes to show though, like when you're aware of like the transition component, and I think that's a huge part. I think when I think about family businesses, sometimes there's like a component of greed that also plays into it. And I think the fact that you're just like, I don't want that to happen. I want to have great relationships with my siblings, because you do come from a big family as well.
Yeah.
And I think you hold a lot of like family value, which I think is amazing. So, okay. And then now I'm going to go back to our day here. So you're checking in with everyone, you're doing your emails, and then what?
And then it's a bunch of meetings.
Okay, what are you doing in these meetings?
So I'm the operations manager.
Okay.
So a lot of things, kind of everything in the farm flows through me.
Okay.
So it's talking about labor. Maybe it's an issue with my barn manager, and we're talking about upcoming labor.
Shortage, or like need to hire more people?
Yeah, we bring in Mexican labor from Mexico. So they're here for 9 months, and we fly them out throughout the year. So timing that, and then we also staff with some local labor as well. So all the Mexican labor have to be home by December 15th. So we have a few weeks where we're the ones packing potatoes. So that's why we have some local staff too.
Okay.
But it is harder to find local people that are willing to work on the farm. And then the meetings are more like operational, like looking at the innovation aspect, looking at different fields to plant, and talking about seed ordering. There's quite a variety.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think like, and because I know you in this situation, like I know your background maybe wasn't always farming, or maybe you grew up with the farm, but then you took another direction and then came back. And it's funny because, I don't know, sometimes I think about like my life now. I'm like, had I known that I would be spending most of my time doing like emails or in meetings, like it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. You can't imagine what your life would have been like being an operations manager of your family farm. So what was your life like before you entered this role, and like what was that transition into being like, okay, just kidding, I want to go back to the farm now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I left the farm at 18. I said, see ya. I got a job weed whacking for this city of Langley, and I was making $32 an hour as opposed to $14 an hour at the farm. So went to university and was working that job in the summers, and then I went and got a sales job at a Fortune 500 company called Syntax. And I really loved it there. Like that was the first time I found success outside of the volleyball court, and the first time I found success in the business. And why I really liked it was because they had really good structure where it's like you are responsible for your own number and for yourself, and if you fail, it's on you. And they would stack.
And that was their, like, they were totally like that. Like, it was very
cutthroat.
Yeah, I was going to say cutthroat. Yeah. Okay.
They loved hiring athletes because of how competitive we were, but they would send out like a stack ranking every week where you could see if you were number one, or you could see who was in last place for sales. And people hated that, but I loved it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it fueled me. And nobody loves cold calling, especially on a Monday. But I knew that if I cold called 50 cold calls on Monday, it was going to set the rest of my week up. And that would crush everyone else. So I would just destroy everyone cold calling. Anyway, really loved it there. But I hit my goal, which was President's Club, top 10% in sales there. And then I didn't really have a goal after that. And so it was easy.
Did they not make one? Was there not like that next level for you to unlock at that point?
Well, there was, but it was just like, do it again next year.
Okay.
Right. So it was like, I was making really good money over the last 5 years. I've been stacking cash. And then I had a business mentor that said, why don't you try coming and moving to Nashville? We'll start this blockchain startup that we've kind of been working on the last year, and we'll go full at it.
And why were you like, blockchain is the next thing for me?
I just love cryptocurrency.
Okay.
I kind of got in on the 2020 bull market.
Okay.
And was just addicted to kind of that quick money aspect. And then I still felt like our business idea for blockchain was awesome. It was putting fractional real estate on the blockchain. So
I don't even understand blockchain. I'm not going to pretend like I do. You're just like talking to someone and it's just woo, like right through me. Okay, but keep explaining it. Yeah.
It's very transparent. So say if you owned a house with like 8 people, it could all be on the blockchain. Basically, you could log in and see everyone's ownership.
Okay.
Very transparent. Anyway, that failed really miserably.
Okay.
And I lost like 70% of my net worth.
From your 5 years of sales?
My 5 years of sales, yeah. In like 2 months.
Oh, because you just were like, I'm going to put all my money into the R&D of this?
It was a lot of money into that. It was a lot of money into cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency itself crashed. at the same time as my business obviously failing.
Oh my.
So like I came back to Canada with my leg or with my tail between my legs.
As in, so your ego shattered.
Ego shattered.
Like top of sales performance, top 10%, and then you put all your. Can I ask what that number was when you like lost 70% of your savings?
It was a few $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Right.
it hurt, but you know, it was really good for me. Honestly.
Okay.
I'm so happy it happened. I'm so happy it happened.
I don't think many people would say that losing like a few $100,000 was like one of the good things that happened.
Well, it just like it freed me from greed, right? Like I used to like think of money all the time, and everything I did was like, you know, I got to grind hard now so I can retire when I'm older and like you have a good life, and that was all I thought about. But now I'm like free from greed, and now I'm making more money than I was in sales.
Wow.
With less care, like as I hold it loosely.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like greed is like shaving. Like you got to constantly get rid of it, or else it's going to keep creeping back and coming back harder.
How do you think you do that?
Donating your money, like being like holding your money very loosely, right? Or like just sponsoring a bunch of organizations that you feel passionate about and being like, you know what, this kind of hurts to give, or like I'm uncomfortable like donating this much per month, but it makes you a better person. And guess what? Everyone that does that on the back end always makes more money. I've never heard one person be like, I gave and it hurt, and it wasn't like tenfolded later on, right? Because it just frees you. Like you go from like a very limited mindset where like, oh, I got to hold on to this money, to an unlimited mindset where like money is just abundance.
I love that. I just learned something today. Well, I think it's also one of those things where it's like, for me, like going into my 30s, like I'm like, I want everything to be set up. I have a certain plan for myself, and I think that's okay. But there's that attachment to money with all of that too, because you know that like if you have a certain number, you're going to be at a certain place. Like if you want to buy a house of some sort, like there's all those things that you need in those metrics to hit those points. But I just like that perspective of also just like, is this coming from a place of greed, or like how can I still help others along the way too?
Totally.
I love it.
But and it's fine balance, because you still want to have goals. You still want to be ambitious, right? But like if you can help people along the way, that's the best place to be. Because if you say, once I get to this number, then I'm going to start donating, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along those lines of like if your friend, or like, you know, if that person's not giving when they didn't have much, then they're not going to give down the road either. Yeah, totally. And I think it's like, I will say like sometimes small things, like even just like going out with a girlfriend and like buying them a hot chocolate, or like things like that compound, where it's like, oh, actually, like I'd love to take you on a trip. Like you did a lot for me this year. Or like I've gifted my friend a coach in the past year too. I was like, you were like the freaking best maid of honor I could have ever asked for. Like I want to give you something to like, I don't know. Anyways, that's awesome. Okay, so sales job, lost it, came back here, tail tucked between your legs, and then what?
I kind of floundered for a few months today. Okay. And I said, you know what? It's time that I find another sales job. I know I'm good at selling.
Did you go back home? Did you like live with your parents at that point again? Okay.
Yeah, I had my place rented out, so I couldn't move back in, which is kind of rough. Okay. But so I lived with my parents. Which, you know, no one loves going back to the
How old are you?
28.
Okay, that's me now. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But such is life. And so then I thought, you know, it's time that I get another sales job. And so
go back to
around. No, I could go back to some. And I interviewed for a few sales jobs, and I got 2 sales jobs offers. And actually, sorry, at this time I did move back into my apartment at the end of 4 months. But my dad said, why don't you try coming back to the farm? Give it a year, and then you can live with no regrets. And I said, absolutely not. No way. So, I have like PTSD from working at that place. No.
From the farm, you had PTSD from when you were 18?
From when I started working at age 5.
Okay.
Right. So 5 to 8.
And what is that like? What does that really look like when you're 5?
So that like is making boxes. Like you make boxes for 8 hours.
Like for real. Like you're actually working the 8 hours and you're doing the job entirely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small story. I grew up with my grandparents having a motel. So I just mentioned I went to go visit them. I just came back from seeing them, but they were in Golden, which is about 2 hours from Calgary. And I grew up in the motel, and I would work laundry. So I spent my summers, my dad was doing his CPA. So for my parents, it was easier if I would go spend time with them. We had my 2 cousins that would go up and my brother. So I was in the laundry room. There's about 80 rooms, and I would fold all the towels until I was big enough to like fold the sheets, because then I had the wingspan to do that. And then also, I was a chambermaid, so I would clean the rooms with my grandma. She would do the bathrooms. I would make the beds, and then the vacuuming and the dusting too. So yeah, that was my just kind of blip into having to work in the family business. And then I think by the time I was in high school, I just didn't spend that same amount of time. I'd go out for like a week, but not like the full 2 months of summer. So
I want to see the stat where it's like kids that worked when they were younger versus how successful they are now, because there must be such a heavy correlation because it does teach you.
I think so. Yeah. And then actually at a certain point, my grandpa let me do front desk. So I was allowed to do like check-in for people. And I think I was like 15, which now that I'm looking at like a 15-year-old, I was like, how was I checking someone in at the front desk?
Seriously.
But also it was like a motel. Like it's like a family-run motel. So I definitely understand how it's a different perspective. But I was really thankful. They actually like trusted me and they let me do the work. I was able to like do cash payments and stuff like that. So
That's awesome.
anyways, yeah. Okay, so you were doing real work at like 5 years old to 18. And then what did it look like as you got older when you were working on the farm?
It was more tractor drive, which was fine, but it wasn't involved in any management. It was like, go plow this field or go rototill this field for like 12 hours. And it's like, okay. And so I just viewed it as like a really crummy job, not like an opportunity. And so that's when my dad was like, you can be a manager. I'm like, I still don't know. But he really pushed me to meet with another farmer.
On the farm?
No, another farmer. We farmed next to him. He owned a very successful operation. He's the farmer that provides the carrots for Ugly Potato Day.
Okay.
And he basically told me to write out pros and cons for all the jobs. So I had a job selling medical laser devices, an offer for them, and a job selling tractors. And then I got the offer to come back to the farm. And so I put together the pros and cons of all of them. And by far, the farm had the least amount of pros and the most amount of cons.
I was waiting for you to say the opposite.
Yes, you were. Like some of the cons. Here are some of the cons from back to the farm. 50% pay cut.
Yeah.
Okay. From on-target earnings of both the sales jobs. An hour commute because my apartment at the time was in Abbotsford and the farm was in Cloverdale.
Oh, brutal.
So an hour commute.
There and back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, each way.
Yeah.
So 2 hours a day of commuting. Working 6 days a week, working Saturdays and holidays, which obviously sales jobs, you don't do that. And then I guess the last one was working with my father.
Sorry, Dad.
But that's one of the best parts.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like also going back to like family business too. It's one of those things of like, because it's the family business, do you like kind of get to cut corners and like not work as hard as everyone? But it really is like, no, you're still working the 6 days. You're still showing up. And I think also you started doing like the labor work. So you kind of had to like work your way through the organization as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then joining back to the farm. So like what did your first day look like? Were you like operations manager at that time?
I came in as production manager, so doing productions, and I kind of just came in as like I'm just going to do a year, and see. But I really
28 years old.
At 28.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been there for 3 years now. And it was good from the start. Like I felt good purpose. I finally felt that sense of accomplishment at the end of the days. Like I didn't really get that in sales as much, but I got that when I was on the farm. And then, social media too, happened about 3 or 4 months after I started.
TikTok became a thing.
TikTok became a thing.
Yeah.
And that was really cool because it started to teach me a lot because I was learning new concepts and then I was teaching it right away. So it was really helping with my memory too of this farming thing that was, new again to me. It was like me rediscovering my love for agriculture and then putting it into social media and then getting immediate positive feedback on it was just an awesome experience.
Well, I think it's like, just two things on that as well. As I was chatting with Harrison earlier, it was one of those things of like, if you're not consuming it, then you should be creating it. But I noticed myself, and like one of the reasons why I wanted to do like this podcast even was because I noticed myself like consuming a lot, and I was like, what if I was the creator in this case? So I think that's like super admirable that you're like, okay, well, I'm actually gonna like learn a new skill on top of now taking on a new job, which is cool. So then TikTok at that time, so it's been 3 years that you've been like a TikToker?
Yeah, 2.5 to 2 3/4.
And you've grown so much to the point that like at my wedding, someone's like, is that Potato Ty? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I didn't know this guy was that famous. But it's cool though, because people will actually be like, oh, that's so cool that you know him. I'm too shy to go say hi. And I'm like, it's just like Heppell. Like, I don't know what other way to put it. But What was that like for you? Like, because you're learning it like it's a skill. You're not just like throwing it out there. You're like really studying it as well. Yeah, like how? Like what were those first days like of making videos? And did you think like this is my goal to have over 1 million followers and over 1 billion views?
No. Like the reason why I created a TikTok account is because during COVID, I saw how viral like an account with 100 followers could go if they just had a decent video. And I never wanted to be an influencer. I never really wanted to put my personal life out there. I kind of like my privacy a little bit, but we were trying to save some farmland that was going to get developed, right? Some of our best farmland that we'd farmed 50 years, we rented from the federal government, and they just added it to a disposal list, meaning that they said, we don't have any use for it.
Really?
Yes. And so we were really afraid that it was going to get developed. So and this is like a really important piece of land for the food security here in British Columbia, because it is the first land that produces potatoes and carrots and cabbage every year. And it's a really big piece to the food security puzzle here in British Columbia. So we knew that. And it was like, how do I get the news out there? We reached out to traditional news sources. They wouldn't pick up the story. So I put it on TikTok. The third video ever I posted got 800,000 views.
Wow.
And I got 10,000 followers overnight. So I basically started with 10,000 followers. Like,
yeah.
And I feel bad when someone's like, I want to make it in social media, and they have 0 followers, and they posted like, 20, 30 videos, and they have like 20 followers. And it's like, keep grinding. You try better topic. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but your topic's kind of boring. Like, if I'm being honest, like farming is traditionally boring.
Yeah.
But I think you've made it so interesting too.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to like how much you've studied the actual like one being a creator. Like you're like, what's my hook? How am I going to find it? And you like are like thinking about the story potentially beforehand. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I got super addicted to studying the algorithm.
Yeah.
Like figuring out, and I just realized how important hooks were. And I'm like, I'm just going to be the best in my industry at making hooks. And that's what I am. If you break it down, I have the best hooks out of any farmer on the internet. I do.
Yeah.
And so all you need to do is catch someone's attention for the first 3 seconds and then pique their curiosity. And then they're going to watch to the end of the video. And if they watch to the end of the video, it doesn't even matter if they interact with the video at all. The algorithm knows that if they watch the full video, they like it, and they're going to keep showing you more, or they're going to keep showing more of my videos to them.
Yeah. I loved how, like, I don't want to say cocky, but basically it's just like, you're like, I'm top 10 in sales. I know I make the best hooks in the industry. And I'm like, but like, you kind of need that though. Like you need that to be like, I'm actually going to do it and I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I want to sprinkle this in, just like pure question. I know that you're doing a course. Does that have anything to do with your like content creation?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've learned so much about creating social media in the last 3 years that I just really, and I have so many people ask me how, that I just want to boil it down into an hour course. Like I am a very to the point guy. Like I don't tell stories just to the point of telling stories. Like when I'm working, it's like, just get to the point.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to create a course. It's like no fluff. It's just like, here's all the things that actually matter. Put it in a course. And then now when someone asks me like, hey, can I have some help with
Buy my course.
media? It's like, buy my course, or like, here's a link, like have it for free. It's not really, it's kind of like, it's a passion project more for me. Like I could talk about social media all day long.
That's wild.
Because I just enjoy it. I think it's like the most fascinating thing. I still think it's underrated.
What do you think is fascinating about it?
It's the biggest human psychology study in the world. Like it's so interesting because it's a new form of how we communicate with each other, right?
Yeah.
And it even translates to like now, like I'm trying to get someone to answer my text, like having a hook works too. You I'm serious. Like
gamifying every component of communication.
It's like I'm just making my life better, right? Like if I want someone to respond to me, it's like I'm gonna send because you can see the preview of the text. So making sure that first part, or that first 3 words is hooky, that they're gonna respond to me.
Okay, give me an example of what you would do if, for like, I don't know, I'm gonna just use as like.
Oh man.
Okay, either like work case or like you want to like get a date or something like that, or you're just like waiting for a response to someone to like get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, getting a date is like about sticking out, right? Not saying like the usual things that people say.
Like, hey, how are you?
Yeah,
I haven't gone on a date in 10 years, so I have no idea.
I mean, I'm great either. I mean, if you even think of an email subject line, for example, right? That is the most important part of the email if you're ever cold emailing someone, right? Because that can pique their curiosity. So playing around with that. I mean, that's something that Joel Hansen is so good at,
I'm
right?
brilliant at it.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, but you still haven't given me like a hook that you would give someone if you haven't gotten a response from them. Like, give me like the first 3 words that you would say.
First 3 words, yeah. What was one I used last week for my buddy? Okay, so I started a text with my buddy saying, "You are the bottleneck of this operation," because we were trying to plan a Mexico trip, and he was taking he was taking three days to get back to me, and we really wanted to book. And so I started my text with, "You are the bottleneck of this operation," and then kept kind of going on responding to him, and then right away he responded, and like 2 days later he ended up booking the flights for us. So,
okay, brilliant. So that did work.
Yeah, it did.
I always I even think like with the sales staff here, like I am building a sales course for them. And I have like a whole bunch of like SOPs of like, what are the things you say after you meet someone in person? Like, what's a good follow-up message? Even like during Black Friday, we just said, hey, as some of the follow-up messages. And that got a thing of like, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten back to you, blah, blah, blah. Like, just small things like that where you're like, what's the psychology of like what will get that response? Or like, what's this next step here to move forward, essentially?
Totally.
Okay, smart. I forgot what we were talking about.
We're talking about social media, like, I just love it.
Yeah, right. When I was visiting my grandparents in Kamloops, it was my grandma and my aunt, my younger cousin and me, and then my grandpa and Harrison. But my grandma was on YouTube Shorts. She will like watch stuff in Punjabi. And my aunt will be on Instagram and she's watching some of like holistic nutritionist. And then my cousin is on probably Snapchat and TikTok watching like podcasts as well on there. And then like me and Harrison are also on our phones. And I like looked around and I'm like, okay, before we all used to be watching TV together and now we're all on our phones together. And it's fine. We had just spent like 4 days together and people need also like alone time too. But I was like, whoa, my grandma, like my 80-year-old grandma on YouTube Shorts and my like 19-year-old cousin on TikTok. And it's just like generation to generation. So when you think about like this is the new way that we communicate, it's true.
I know. And some of the older generations that didn't have technology are more addicted than like our generations because it's like crack cocaine to that. They're like reels. Are you kidding me? This is amazing.
Yeah. Well, she's fascinated by the amount of information that's on there. She's like, I didn't know you, like, she was looking at a button that you could make, a button video. And she's like, this is so cool that you can make them like this. And I'm like, I would never watch this, but that's great that you're finding that. But it's cute though. She needs that. Okay, now I'm getting sidetracked. I wanted to go through, well, we already talked about it a little bit, but I would love to know, just as we were talking about like our year and like planning goals, one of the things that I really, really wanted to talk about was our Masogi. I think it's just a really cool concept. And we talked about it just because I think we're into like goal setting, planning your year. And I don't know if we told you to read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell or where you got that one from, but we read it and then I think you read it as well. And that was a game changer of a book too. So between like the Masogi, Jesse Itzler's like Big Ass Year, and then Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. And then you just hired a VA as well. So there's a bunch of things to sprinkle in there. But why don't we kind of go through with like the big rocks and the pebbles?
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, cool. So as we're just talking about like the vision for the year and the motto, we both read a book that had to do with really buying back your time in a simple form. And it had to do with like the concepts of your big rocks and then the sand. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the book by Dan Martell talks about a story where there is a lady that she basically put out a big jar and she asked someone to fit the big rocks and the sand into the jar. And so the guy dumped the sand first and then he tried fitting in the big rocks and it didn't fit in the jar. And then another person came and they put the big rocks in first and then they dumped the sand into the jar and it all fit perfectly. And that just goes to show what your calendar should look like in your year planning. You plan the big rocks first. The trips you want to do, the anniversary, the goals you want to accomplish, you put those first in your calendar. And then everything else, the sand, the small meetings, the fires that come up, those can all go around it. And so that's something I've really taken to heart this year. And I've planned all my vacations so far this year. So I got like 5 vacations and they're all in the calendar and things are just going to have to move around it.
Totally. I do the same thing and I didn't realize it until I had read the book. But basically like in my notes section, I have my years since 2021 where I've put like every month in and then like all my family's and friends' birthdays. So I always have that blocked out. And then I usually plan like 2 bigger trips, like international trips, and then like a quarterly trip as well. So same concept where you have like, you know, your 5 to 6 trips planned out. I just thought it was such a smart way to plan a year, but then also just to set yourself up. Like you already have it rather than being like, oh, I'm just going to wing it or I'll see what happens. It's like, how are you going to make the big things happen if you don't plan for them?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to make time for it.
Right? I think that the analogies of the big rocks and the sand is just, and you broke it down perfectly, it just makes it easy to digest as well. Now, one of the other things I really liked was the concept of a Masogi, which I don't know if he talks about in the book, but I know Jesse Itzler talks about it. Now, if I was to paraphrase what the Masogi is, it's like a year-defining event that can be like spiritual, mental, physical, of any type, really. And I think Aaron Spivak said that also it should be like 50% likely that you would not, or the odds are more likely that you wouldn't be able to actually accomplish it. And I have my Masogi plan for the year.
What is it?
I'm really excited. So I cycle, and we're going to bike. It's the Whistler Grand Fondo, but I'm going to do the challenge route. So basically it starts from Vancouver, you go up Cypress Mountain, and then you bike all the way to Whistler. I would need to confirm the exact elevation, but I think it's about 250 feet.
Wow.
In about 160 kilometers. So I'm excited for that.
That sounds very difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think even just the Sea to Sky from Vancouver to Whistler alone is a little bit challenging. And now I'm like, I want to do the challenge route and actually like bike up Cypress Mountain too. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that's my Masogi this year.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I've never done a Masogi before, but I listened to that Jesse podcast, and it was just like, yes, that makes so much sense.
Insane. So, his word was insane, everything.
Insane. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much so, even like when you're starting the new year, you know, like go through your closet and throw out the stuff that you're not going to wear. Like start with a clean slate. And I'm like, yeah. And I threw out like 5 garbage bags
really?
of stuff. Yeah. I'm just like gone. Like my house was just like minimalist. It was amazing.
I probably clean my house every quarter, like deep clean and reorganize. So yeah.
You bet. But my Masogi this year is I want to scuba dive 20 times all in one trip. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wait, how does that work? Are you gone for 20 days?
No, you can scuba dive 3 to 4 times a day.
Wow.
Yeah. Or
okay.
I mean, four is much, but 3 times a day. So I booked Mexico and I'm going down there for 12 days with a buddy, and we're just going to hammer out a bunch of dives.
That's exciting. What do you see on a dive?
I love seeing sharks. So that's why we're going to Mezcal, Mexico, because there's a bunch of sharks there. I really like seeing sharks and whales and rays. So big stuff.
Okay. I didn't know that you do that when you're diving.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this guy just likes water.
No. It is like a whole new world under there.
How far under do
you go? The furthest I went is like 150 feet. So you
what's that in meters? Sorry?
45 meters or something like that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Meters.
And is there color like under there? Like, what do you see?
Yeah. I mean,
is it bright?
Yeah. It can be very clear. Like, you go in some nicer places like Mexico, the visibility is really good. Where Thailand, it's not that good. So it depends on the time of the year too.
What's your likelihood of seeing a shark when you're diving?
It depends where you are, but in Mexico, it's like 50% of the dives you'll see a shark. Yeah.
And you're not like scared? You're not like internally freaking out a little bit?
No, I mean, like you have a better chance of winning the lottery back-to-back times and basically getting, unless you're stupid.
Yeah. What do they look for? Like if you had like bait for something?
If you had bait, you can go some bait dives and people get bit on those, which I think is dumb. But most of the sharks aren't aggressive either. You're seeing like blacktip sharks or like reef sharks, which they won't bite you.
Have you ever taken a picture of the shark?
No, I need to get an underwater camera.
Yeah.
I know.
You totally should. That'd be cool.
I know, I should actually.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's sweet. Okay, so then going back to our year, one of the things that I also liked as a takeaway was like show me your calendar. And I think that's when you're talking about doing time audits as well. One of the things that I think is super cool is when I look back at my calendar, I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing with my time. Or like that, I shouldn't have been doing that with my time. So that's something I'm also just being a little bit more cognizant of what am I actually filling my calendar up with.
Totally.
Right?
Doing that calendar audit where you get granular too. You audit every 15 minutes. Like what are you doing every 15? It's tedious, but it's so good to look back and do. Right. And that's where I realized I am spending 2.5 hours of my day on email. Like, and that's where I was like, I'm hiring a virtual assistant, and I hired one. And I was going to hire one from the Philippines, but thanks to Harrison, I chose Latin America, and it has been a 10 out of 10 experience. Like I almost teared up the other day. because I was like, this is just exactly what I needed. Like someone that cares, someone that's working proactively, someone that's just like on top of the ball where I can send them stuff, it gets done. This is so nice.
Okay, so we've been working with VAs for probably like 8 years. Like we've almost always had a VA. So what was your process in hiring one? And was there a certain point where you were like, I have to have one now, but you didn't know what that next step was? Because I think a lot of people don't know what it's like working with a virtual assistant, because it's very different than also having like an in-person team member.
Yeah, I mean, it's a company that finds the talents, and then you actually pay the company and they pay the virtual assistant. But what works really well is there's that trust there. Like they make them sign off, so they're not going to like, do anything with my social media. And then also they have a 3-month guarantee, so that takes away a lot of the risk. Like if it doesn't work, they'll replace someone in 3 months. And so just having that third party to go through was awesome. And then working with someone in South America was amazing because they're only 3 hours ahead of us, right? Where the Philippines, they're like 12 hours ahead, and it's like they're pulling a night shift,
Yeah,
right?
flipped.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so now that you have a virtual assistant, how long have you been working with them for?
2 weeks.
Okay, and what have those 2 weeks been like? Because I feel like there's a lot of learning curve over that time.
Yeah, there is.
How did you set up for that?
I mean, it's one thing at a time. So she doesn't have access to my inbox yet. So that's the goal for this next week, is to get her in the inbox and trained. And Dan Martel does a great job.
And you use that flagging?
100%.
Okay, cool.
But right now, I've given her access to my social media account. So she's responding to some comments. She does.
Because you used to do that yourself.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of time to be spending there. Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of like, sometimes just wouldn't even look at the comments at all in the video, which isn't any good.
Yeah.
Right. So she does that now, which is awesome. And she does all the posting for 10 servings. So I've completely given that to her. She's working on an ad set for 10 servings. She redid my website.
Hold on, sorry. She's doing an ad set, so she's making the creative and launching it?
So she's writing the script for it, and then I'm going to film it.
Wow.
Yeah, like she's got her marketing degree, and it's like 10 American dollars an hour. So like you can't really beat that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also I think that like the great thing about virtual assistants is they're so diverse. And I don't want to just say like virtual assistants, like they're obviously people and they're very skilled. But I just think also like the work ethic and then the skill set, like those two together make it just such an amazing combo. I think that's why I've had a virtual assistant for so long. And they've always like kind of either been more like personal end or more business end, but it's great because they can kind of do almost everything.
They do. I mean, they become a part of your family.
Yeah.
Right? Like you train them to think like you almost. And that's why like you want to treat them really well, because if there is turnover, like that is a massive loss, right? It's so much work building that trust and training someone to like basically be your shadow.
Yeah. I would say like if there was one thing I would have as a takeaway, and maybe just because I've learned this in the past years, like as you're teaching them everything, almost like Loom record it or also like SOP it, just so if you ever had to replicate it again, it's at least kind of already done.
That's such good wisdom, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because it's happened a couple times, right? Where it's like, oh, like, things just don't work out for whatever reason. So just try to create that SOP while you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if you just hop on a video call, just Loom record it. Do you know Fathom?
No. Is that the one that summarizes all the meetings?
Game changer. Yeah. Yeah. So you have that one?
No, but I heard about it. That was the podcast I was telling
you. Like you have to.
Okay.
It's so good. Like every single meeting you're ever in, just have that. If there's like one app takeaway from this,
yeah.
Fathom, Harrison, I am like such a dinosaur and I basically hate everything that he ever is like good a new thing. It'll give you a summary of everything. There's action items that get taken away, and then you take all those Fathom notes and then put them in Notion. And then that way you have a document of every single meeting you've ever had with your VA or like as an operations manager with whatever point of contact, then you have all those logs there.
I need to also get Notion. I just use I'm a dinosaur too. I use my notes app.
No.
Every day I write down my goals in there, my power list, and I can't go to sleep until I've got all 5 locked out, and I got just pages now.
What do you use for apps? What's your app stack? Don't say notes.
Notes. I'm a simple man.
Okay, so we've talked about how you're on TikTok. We've talked about how you're also a farmer. And I think that the only thing that we haven't really touched on is 10 servings. And that's really how I had first met you, essentially, like through LOI was through 10 servings. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that and what that looks like and Ugly Potato Day?
For sure. I mean, Actually, 10 servings came from Ugly Potato Day. So the story behind Ugly Potato Day is I just come back from the food bank and heard the stat that 1 in 4 children here in British Columbia were food insecure. And I was walking by a bin of potatoes and we couldn't sell them because of their looks and because they had these small little cracks in them. And because of those cracks, we couldn't really donate because it was a logistics issue. So I just hit around 15,000 followers on social media. So I posted to my media, come out this Saturday, come grab some free potatoes. And we had 12 people come out over 4 hours. Me and my mom, I remember being
15,000 to 12.
Yeah. I remember it being like, kind of feeling like a failure, like, oh man, only 12 people came out. And so, we're like, we're going to do it again next week. So we did it again the following week and we had 75 people came out. And then we did it 2 weeks later and we had 200 people come out. And then we did a month later and we had 800 people come out. And then fast forward to our 17th or 18th time doing it, we had that 15,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was okay. Why do you think that happened? Even from going from like 12 to 75?
I mean, I think the word got out there. I think also people just want to be a part of a community. People love the idea of being a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So we'll often have someone come in like a Porsche or like a BMW to an Ugly Potato Day. They grab 5 pounds of potatoes and then they donate $50. Right. And like they don't need the produce. They just want to be a part of the day because they recognize this as something that's doing really good in their community. And it was just the right place, the right time. Like this is some of the hardest times that we've gone through at Canada. And it will be harder too in the future, especially with this tariff coming up and different aspects in our culture happening. And so things like Ugly Potato Day are going to keep growing. And, we're going to try to get to 40,000 people this next year at one event.
That's the goal for it. Okay. Do you have a date set for it yet?
It's going to be end of August. We don't have a finalized date with the city yet, but it's going to be at the Bill Reid Amphitheater in Cloverdale. And I go there every year for Canada Day and they host 90,000 people there for Canada Day. So I know 40,000 is doable there.
Okay. Well, put the date in my calendar and then I'm going to block it out.
Okay, I will. I mean, you're going to be part of the board. We need planning. So.
I didn't know if I seriously got hired for that.
Yeah, you're hired. I need your to get the date and then I'll set the board, but I need to fundraise like $200,000 for this. So I've been working in the background meeting with sponsors, but we're going all out. Yeah.
Okay, this is exciting.
I know, very excited.
So how did 10 servings come from Ugly Potato Day then?
Yeah, so people were always asking like if there was some merchandise that they could associate with Ugly Potato Day, and I was always wearing hats in my videos, so I just got a hat designed and launched it. And I really like the idea of 10 Tree, where they would give back to. It was like a company with a purpose, or it was like a mission statement that was a company. And that's what I wanted 10 servings to be. So that's where we got the idea of selling these shirts to help fund Ugly Potato Day. So every item purchased is 10 servings that we rescue and donate to the food bank. Because at the end of the day, it's really just a logistics issue, food insecurity. It's not that we don't grow enough food. It's just it takes effort and money to get that food to the food bank and the people.
Okay, actually, I have a question then specifically about food insecurity, because you said like it is a problem and it will continue to be. What do you mean by that?
We have a logistics issue of getting the food to people. And I think that's always going to be there, unfortunately. A lot of times people would choose like crappy food than healthy food. And I think that creates food insecurity as well. Because there is access to food, even the homeless people can go and get food, but it's, do they choose to? And yes,
nutrient-dense food?
Nutrient-dense food,
okay.
Right? And I know like some of the food banks we work with, they refuse to do food drives anymore. They only want to like, can you just give us cash donations and we'll go buy actually healthy food that's actually going to nourish our clients, right? But I do see it as we're always going to have some sort of food insecurity unless we can really hone in this logistics issue, which seems to be one of the harder puzzles to put together.
Okay, and when you say logistics, is it literally getting the produce from point A to point B?
That's a large portion of it. It's also the volume of it too. A lot of farmers will just dump out their ugly produce, and it's not because they're bad. It's just because they're strapped for time and they don't have the labor, or they can't spend the money to pack it to donate the food to, right?
Now.
Or they will, but it's to a smaller food bank that maybe only takes like 5,000 pounds of potatoes, which is a lot, but they have 100,000 pounds of potatoes that they're just going to sell for cow feed for 2 cents because they can sell it by the truckload, as opposed to having to pack it into 5-pound bags and then donate it.
I understand. Yeah. Okay, I get it. So if it's not like grade A or B, is it considered like grade C?
Yeah, basically number 2 or
number 2
or call. Yeah.
Okay, and then it's just the thing of it's just potentially too expensive to have it gone in any other way, so I'd rather just get the cheapest option so it's out of here.
Totally. Yeah,
that makes
cheapest and can take the most at time.
And that's brilliant. Like Ugly Potato Day is just also so simple. I mean, now you have a lot of just logistics involved in it, but before it was people just driving to the farm, taking the food home with them.
Yeah, and it was so easy when I was on the farm. Like I wouldn't really have to think about it until the day up because I was just bringing out bins of potatoes to the front of our farm, come grab it, and then it was like a 6-hour ordeal where like I think on October 19th when we did it, I feel like I just had panic on my shirts.
Day so vivid.
Yeah, I mean it made it very memorable. It was like the rainiest day of the year, and I guess my swing big moment was I saw it was going to rain 4 inches, and I was afraid. We had 250,000 pounds of produce to give out. And I was afraid that not enough people were going to come and grab it. So I created that infamous video now.
Okay, so my last question for you here, Mr. Tyler Heppell, is what do you wish more people knew about you or your work?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people know me from my social media, but that is such a small part of my day. I am a farmer first and foremost and will always be a farmer. And yes, I love the creative outlet of social media, but it's literally like maybe 2 hours a week out of like a 60, 50-hour work week is creating the videos itself. So, Potato Ty is like a fun person to play. I'm really just like the farmer Tyler.
Okay, Farmer Tyler. Okay, now I know I said that was my last question, but do you think you'll ever show people a little bit more of like the actual work, or is it potentially just like not like interesting enough for social media?
I think I want to get there. I want to get more long form content. And then I can show a lot more of that because I think there is the space for it. But I need to say no to something else that I'm currently doing if I want to do that. Okay. And I haven't decided what I'm going to say no to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, well, today was an absolute treat. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Can't wait to see what this actually ends up being like once we clip it all together.
Yeah.